I'm going to start with a couple of poems, just to get it out of the way, but also because the novel's going to be a bit of a change of pace. So, this is a poem called Crush. Hold hands a moment. For a second, touch her cheek, picking a dead leaf from her hair. Buy sweet red grapes for lunch. Offered share. Watch her mouth slowly crush them. It's too much to hope for more. It is quite enough to have these things. To have but not possess her love. Luxuriating the distress of stealing moments. Fragile and yet tough whispers of desire. Accumulate your joy fragment by fragment. Never say a word. She's yours, or she can say she never heard a hint of what your actions speak. She'll toy with you a month. 10 years from now, she cries, awake from dreams of you, kissing her thighs. And this other poem is actually a poem about someone I've been in love with months, years after I wrote it, which just goes to show the irony. Her dress is red as blood, pulled where the light can make it glisten. Mischief in her eyes more than allure. Feigns innocent surprise that we are looking at her. Latex tight on skin. Buttocks a pure aching curve, which eyes stroke, drawn there with a magnet's force. We go on looking even though remorse is part of lust. The naked arms deserve a poem to themselves. They are that song, extended line that covers yet implies her breasts, just as the dress shows us her thighs while hiding them. We know we do her wrong in staring. She stares back. It's only just that she should challenge our still gazing lust. And one recent, slightly lighter poem, not much lighter. I do not die from love. It's like the flu keeps me awake all night, hot in my bed. Confused sensations pounding through my head. Brain staring at black crosswords with no clue all night. My eyes make water. I don't weep because it's sickness and not love. My heart will beat perpetual, not stop and start again as love does even in my sleep. I've known when people die, memory's sad trick. You turn to talk to them. They're mourn again, loss unforgotten. Love's that sort of pain. This is a different way of being sick. Constant and ceasing waits for you to call. A heartache is not like love at all. Okay. Poetry came back into my life quite recently when I was actually working on the first quarter of what's going to be a quartet of fantasy novels. Fantasy set in the real world, sort of, with a bit of magic in it. And unlike everyone else, I have, because I'm greedy, I have two heroines. So here's one of them. Sicily, 1926. I followed him through the streets of the awakening town. His footfalls echoed along the white-walled roads. My sandals did not even whisper. As he passed, Small, swarthy men who had just left their unlit homes turned their gaze away from his eyes or made sudden jabbing yawns. Mostly he ignored them, but every so often he would he would pause and gaze and stare at them until they were compelled to meet his eyes, then toss his great head in a sardonic laugh and stride on. Most of them looked at me as if they could not let themselves see a small dark girl with few clothes and many weapons. Puritanism and propriety more often allow me to pass as if unseen than they lead to the throwing of stones. He took good care to cross the street rather than walk alongside the basilica. Perhaps he wished to see the last glimmer of moonshine black from its gilt. He strode briskly. I had no trouble keeping up with him, yet was aware he moved fast for a man of his age and habits, a point to be noted. I knew where he was going. My floppy-haired informant had been quite specific and I observed for days from the shadow. At worst, this was not an urgent case. High above the town, on the headland that gave it its name, he would stand looking west, not welcoming the dawn, but saying farewell to the night, his back turned firmly to the east. He was, in any case, not from it by a ridge that even he would be hard pressed to climb. Rather than be there before him, I preferred to watch him from my own shadows. He might, after all, be just a fraud and a waste of my interest. I hoped on the whole that he was. He would be at most just a small threat, just a small meal for my sword or spear. I found myself liking this crony nonetheless. He had insolence and courage and a degree of self-centered charm. The equivalent of his step was a cock crew. Somewhere out the way he had come down from his villa in the hills. And as the breeze of daybreak blew in salt from the sea, and I paced gently behind him, he turned and spoke. You are not afraid of me. I fear no man, and few women. I stood still, my arms by my side, not yet confronting him or making any threats, save that implied by my presence and stillness. He stalked towards me, looking down his beak-like nose. He really was imposing, I thought, and very little of that bulk was other than muscle. I let him get close, so close that he was towering over me, full of confidence and threat. I caught just a faint smell of cognac and ether on his breath. And then my spear was pricking his left nostril so fast that I did not even think of it. And even then, when most men would at least have stumbled or stammered for a second, he stepped back with assurance. You are formidable. Then again, as a Frenchman would, formidable. That, I shrugged, is merely a matter of my word. He looked at me more closely. Now, this should be easy. The tan skin, and the hair caught up in a twirl of knives at the back, and a slight scar on your left cheek, and the spear and quiver of other weapons slung at your back. Archaic work, some of them, but with the shine of use as much as the time of age. I could see his mind riffling through knowledge. Some men's memories were like libraries where they wandered, but his was a set of files. Ah, he sounded almost impressed. I'm not used to meeting powers like that, some myself, and I thought that the huntress was merely a myth. Clearly not. So I was real, there. And to what do I owe? You know the task I've set myself, I looked at him sternly. I am here to dissuade you from courses of action you might be considering. Consider it a fair warning. My dear young woman, Crowley began, but I would not let him finish. Young? Oh, he smiled, ages old and eternal, of course, and yet, as you will admit, young nonetheless, a caught fragment of the world springtime. Flatterer. Crowley looked down at me quizzically. He was taking all this with surprising calm, even for a magus. Perhaps my informant had been wrong. And the course of action would be the sort of thing of which I take a dim view. Ah, he said, you need have no such fears. While mass murder and torture are not pastimes to which I have any especial ethical objection, you understand nonetheless that I am the wickedest man in the world. And, that is not a title I propose to give up in order to become some kind of third-rate deity. The gods I have met have all been horrid, vulgar people with whom I would not care to share eternity. That's leaving aside the God of my parents, that terrible old William Moore. Ah, I said, he has a fine physique, especially when I was young. You'd have liked him then, in the days before beard. Truly looked unconvinced. Well, I gave the words an air of finality. That's all right then. He gave me that look again. Have you actually lived for thousands of years and retained that much capacity for trust? Up to this moment, I was not even sure rituals of blood actually worked. No, I spoke with emphasis because this man clearly did not yet understand with whom he was dealing. I've lived for thousands of years, and in that time, no one has broken that word to me and managed to regret it for very long. Put all thoughts of the rituals in your mind, and you will live until you die in the course of mortality. There are worse ways to go. Really, he spoke less with sarcasm than as a man genuinely curious. Indeed, the dark god of the Slavs begged for his creators like a blind man with a bowl howling for alms. And I walked away from him into shadow. Mara is an eternal, dawn of time, vigilante, policeman's god, because in this world magic is real, and as my other heroine says, people talk of magic as a technology of will, as if that were a good thing. The rituals of blood are a method for becoming immortal and staggeringly powerful by mass murder and torture. Not all gods have that background, and the ones that do have that background, Mara executes. Which means that she's both the protector of the weak and the top predator in the food chain. My other heroine is very different. She's a woman Mara casually saves from a minor minister in the Thatcher cabinet, who's also an ogre in his spare time, who, as it happened, killed Mara's best friend and roommate, who comes back as a ghost to announce that they have a secret employer for whom they're going to work. Now, Emma has very few powers. Caroline can stop time for her being a ghost and can help her with languages a bit. But obviously, by the same token, their relationship is on the brink of becoming something else. Can't be consummated. I'm going to read a bit I haven't read before because we've been talking vampires, and oh dear, I have vampires in this book. Ella needs to go and talk to a vampire. She needs to find out about this marriage, dynastic marriage between the ruling families of the elves and the vampires, which is brokering. And she, in the loos at Wigmore Hall, meets this young goth. She looked up at Emma. You're Emma Jones, aren't you? My father said you would probably turn up around now. She looked up at Emma up and down with a bored expression. Personally, she said with a long stress on the first syllable that was clearly intended to be a far more successful sneer than it was. I don't see what the fuss is about. Emma smiled at her in a way that this child might think benevolent. Personally, she echoed, only mildly mocking, I'm inclined to agree with you. It's very easy to do the best at what you do if there's no one else much doing it. The goth looked vaguely puzzled with a hint of aggression. Father said you were a lot more arrogant than that. I find that one should never place too much reliance on the opinions of one's father. Emma looked at the young woman appraisingly. Clearly, if there was some sort of dynastic elf-vampire marriage in the works, this was the bride. Come to that, I hope that when I finally got to meet a vampire princess, there would be some kind of surprise involved. I suppose both of us are doomed to disappointment. The goth drooped her lower lid sulkily, showing off expensive plum-collared gloss. Emma found it becoming. I mean, she added, I would have expected something by way of fangs, at least. "I've got fangs," the girl said in a hurt little voice. "They're almost through, look." And suddenly Emma found herself conducting an impromptu dental examination. The girl stepped in close and opened her mouth wide so that Emma could see two small white points that had hardly penetrated the gum. Poor dear, teething nose must really hurt. It is part of the price of blood. The girl recited a speech that she had clearly learned by heart. "Learning to live with pain is what fits us for rule." "Ah," Emma said non-committally. Why was it, she wondered, that upper-class people are so keen on telling you how their problems make them superior? Even Caroline, bless her. They're a little on the small side. I know. The girl raked one hand across her mouth in a way that made clear where the tears in her glass and skin had come from. "But they're ever so sharp." "Yes," Emma said. "I can see that." This close, the girl smelled strongly of patchouli and iron, with a faint undercurrent of moth kills. Emma was uneasily aware of just how close together they were standing. It was damned if she was going to back away from a child half her age, even if that child was a supposedly deadly predator. The girl smiled, making the most of those extra teeth and a pair of eyes that some would find hypnotic in their cold rimmed intensity. "Am I making you uneasy, Emma Jones?" Emma smiled back. She'd learned long ago that a properly aggressive smile really is all in the carriage of the neck, far more than the teeth or the eyes. "Not especially. Once you've fended off the occasional mania and succubus, glands don't affect you very much. And you really should air velvet for a couple of hours before you wear it." The child looked disappointed, but Emma cut her off. "I don't know what your father told you, but I don't fall for teenagers. I'm an old married woman, you silly." She thought about mentioning the fact that the girl was herself on the brink of some vast dynastic marriage, but standing this close with the girl's hot breath in her nostrils, mentioning old princes seemed inappropriate. Still, after a quick run through the literature, glad to see that it fit the seductive stereotype, rather than going for the fat ears and withered features look. The goth was so close that Emma could see where her little beauty spot was slightly smashed. "Oh, I do have an uncle like that, but most of us are really quite presentable. My uncle doesn't go out in society, of course, or anywhere much." "You can't go in just now," she announced. The concert has started, so we may as well take our time. In a few moments, the room will be prepared, and you can take your seat with the rest of the catalogue. We won't, of course, feed from you. That would be discourtesy in the circumstances. Oh, and for future reference, many of us rather like a smudge of garlic in the blood. Emma genuinely did not know what was about to go on. Nothing good, she was sure, but nothing especially bad. Surely if vampires regularly devoured whole concert audiences, the market for classical music would be declining even faster than it already was. Then she had one of those leaps of intuition that almost never got her into trouble and sometimes got her little and often. That makes sense. The goth looked at her pityingly. Of course. We're vampires, not psychopaths.
I'm sure you'll all join me again to give a thank you to everyone, Roz, Sophia and Eleanor here. At this time that we'd like to invite questions if you have any for speakers here today. If you have any, shy, but if not, I'm sure you can come up afterwards and ask questions. We're happy to do that. Yeah? Okay, well, thank you all for coming anyway. There's some refreshments at the back as well, so if you want to mingle and get talking. Okay, thanks again. Thanks.